Indie over 50 artists. Are we doomed? A MusicRadar report issued late last year indicated that there were more songs released any single day in 2024 than the entire 1989. Now that feels just like such an amazing and powerful statistic. But how does it make us feel? How do you feel about this insight, about this knowledge? Does it make sense to you? Maybe as an appreciator of music, I think that's awesome. I've got so much choice now. I've got all this lovely music to soak up and enjoy. Maybe as a selfish artist, I'm thinking that's too much competition. How am I ever going to cut through? How am I going to make an impact? And the report estimates there are over 75 million music creators today. And I thought I was one in a million. And if you think about that in terms of the world global population, over 8 billion now, that puts us as 1 in 100 creating and generating and releasing music. So how does it make you feel? Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel disappointed? Do you feel surprised? Do we feel doomed? But guess what? Like many of us in Indie Over 50, I was there. I actually put out a record in 1988, late 1988. So I was out there technically in 1989. And so the question for me is, do I really think that there's 365 times more music out there now than there was when I was an independent artist in 1989? Because when I thought about it that way, I thought, well, maybe not. G'day and welcome to Indie Over 50. My name is John Huggart and this is a channel dedicated to those of us over the age of 50 releasing new original music on YouTube and Spotify. And look, if you've got your own links already, you've released that music, please drop them in the links below, because in the comments section below, because we can add them to our Indie Over 50 playlist. We've got them on Spotify and YouTube. Okay, so back to 1989. I was there. I'm sure you were there as well. So is there really today 365 times more music than there was back then? And I've got 3 ideas as to why that may not be the case. Now, sure, there are rational reasons why there is more music. I mean, number one, there's a bigger population. I think in that period we've gone from about 5 billion people to over 8 billion people. Number two, there's a whole heap now of covers out there, re-releases through remastering. There's mixes as well. And of course, the third reason is AI. Now, without going too deep into AI, which I will be doing a video on soon, so I'm very excited, looking forward to that, because it's going to be such a difficult topic to handle and talk about and discuss. But if we think about AI in 2024, I still don't feel like we've been smothered with it. I might be wrong, but I just see the tools and how they're getting so much better. And I feel that if there's going to be an influx of AI released music, I think it'll be 2025 and beyond. So as I say, they are some rational reasons as to why there'll be more music releases in 2024 than 1989, but no way near 365. So here's my hypothesis on the reason for that huge difference. Number one is cost. Now, when I put out that independent record, it was vinyl record, 7-inch. That's what I could afford. We could put out a double-sided record. And seriously, it cost about the price of a good second-hand car. Today, if you were to put out that similar recording, we know that, look, if you've got the talent and you've got the skills in your home studio, you can put it out at close to $0. And I know as soon as I say that, I'm not recognizing the dedication, the practice, the craft, and all the money you've spent on your musical instruments and your production gear, computer gear, microphones, and all those good things. So it's not costless, but that last song may only cost you less than $100 to get released out on Spotify or YouTube. But even if you don't have all those skills, going out and engaging a producer now with maybe some artists or some musicians to help record the track is still only going to cost you maybe in American dollars, maybe $1,000 to $2,000 to $3,000. You can get a great recording out there. Yes, you can spend more. Yes, you can spend less. So it will depend on how you go about that. Now, the second big difference between 1989 and 2024 was, of course, distribution. The only artists I ever heard back in 1989 were those Australian recording artists. And of course, we had our fair share of the big international hits out here as well. Of course, we had artists like Queen, we had Elton John, we had Cher, Tina Turner. But when you think about it, there was so much music we never heard. All those other artists that weren't released into the Australian, even though they were very, very successful in their home market, let alone the independent musicians that were out there making music, releasing music, or out there in the marketplace at that time. So just the physical ability for us to access music was so much more limited. And of course, you've probably not heard of some of the great artists that we heard, the iconic Australian acts like Cold Chisel and Divinals. They probably didn't make it big overseas, but were just huge, as big as the In Excess or the AC/DC that you have heard of. And of course, it was my record. Now, unless you happen to be listening to the few radio stations that played it, or attend one of the record stores where I happen to have personally delivered it, or come along to one of our gigs, you wouldn't have heard my release as well. It just wasn't an option for you to hear it wherever you were in the world in 1989. But here's my third hypothesis, and this is probably the biggest and more central one to this definition of release, because back in 1989, I wrote and performed a lot of original music. And, I played it to family and friends. I played it at our gigs. I recorded it, maybe as best as we could on a Tascam Porta track, performed it at bars and pubs and parties. Though sometimes great songs, sometimes where friends would actually know the words or they'd ask for it when we played. In fact, those songs were played so often that I actually received royalties from them, from the live performance royalties, even though they'd never been released. So the reason I believe that the 1989 versus 2024 comparison is just so daunting, so overwhelming, and does make you feel like we're doomed, is because of that there was just a lot of great original music being written, being performed, that was never formally released. If you're an indie over 50 artist like me, you've probably got a similar story of, maybe you put out some records or had some releases, or maybe you never put out any releases back in 1989, despite the fact that maybe at that point in time you were performing, writing originals and performing them. Now, we know Spotify and YouTube, they are endless rivers of gold, creativity, rich, beautiful music, or sewers of swamp, or whatever. There's a lot of music out there. Not all of it is great. But the data is just so overwhelming and extraordinary. So you can feel as though you'll be doomed. Why should I even put out any new music? And that's probably an attitude we didn't have in 1989. We were thinking in our world, we were thinking local, and we wrote. And that's what we do today as well. If you're a songwriter, you write, you share, you express your story. That's why we do that. We love this music. Now, thinking about that, back in 1989, some of the biggest songs in the world, I remember them very, very well. The Look by Roxette, She Drives Me Crazy by Fine Young Cannibals, Eternal Flame by the Bangles, and there were local artists like Tucker's Daughter by Ian Moss, that guitarist from Cold Chisel I spoke about before, and Kate Sobrano with Bedroom Eyes. Great pop songs. Now, what do we remember from 2024 in music? Well, that's always a test for indie over 50 artists. It's kind of like, we try and keep up to date with music, but there's something much more powerful about the music of our youth. So I had to look at what the top songs are last year, and there were some that I absolutely loved. I love Chapel Roan with Good Luck Babe. A Fortnight with Taylor Swift and Post Malone is up there as well. And the sad thing in Australia is that most of the top ranking songs, certainly from a Spotify playlist point of view last year, were old Australian songs. Like there was AC/DC, You Shook Me All Night Long. I don't know how old that is, maybe 30 years old now. There was Riptide by Vance Joy. Awesome song, awesome performance, but it's not fresh and it's not new. And in fact, the one that I can think of that I absolutely love was actually a remake or a remix or whatever you call it now, but that was a Darwin-based originally DJ called Cyril, and he put together a record of Stumbling In. And if you remember, that goes back to our era with Suzi Quatro and Chris Norman, the original artists. There you go. Are we doomed? 1989, 2024, a lot of differences, but we still love good songs. And your songs were not written yet, so stay with us on Indie Over 50. Now, look, if you like these videos, please hit the subscribe button. That's free. For if you've got any new released music on Spotify or YouTube, just drop the links in the comments below. Now, one thing I'm going to do now as well is a bit of a social experiment. I'm actually going to play one of my songs on this video. Now, only about 30 seconds of it. It's actually a bit of a test, part of this whole checking on the copyright thing and how YouTube works. And I thought, well, I'll do it with one of my songs that I actually own, and I've got all the rights to share on this YouTube video. It's a bit of a test for the past, so you can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave. And this one is called Let the Games Begin.
Enter the hero onto the stage, appears in a moment through the smoke and the flame.